Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Black Men Speak. I am Catherine Robertson-Pilling, and this is the second conversation with three men I am privileged to call my friends: Cal Harris Jr., Ali Joseph, and Joshua Kamara. When George Floyd was killed, I reached out to these three men, and the idea for these conversations was born. Cal Harris Jr. is a contemporary jazz artist in the United States. As an engineer, programmer, and producer, he's toured the world with musical legends like Earth, Wind & Fire, Lenny Kravitz, Prince, Whitney Houston, and Beyonce. He's released 3 successful CDs with multiple hit singles, and Billboard magazine ranked him number 4 in his genre for the year 2018. He was born in Los Angeles and now lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Cal and I met in a process group in Los Angeles in 1995, and we've stayed connected over meaningful and creative conversations ever since. Ali Joseph is a priest in the Anglican Diocese of Johannesburg, South Africa. He was born and bred in the harsh landscape of South Africa's Northern Cape. A child of the African soil, he spent much of his life working in the Catholic Church on 4 continents. Classically trained in philosophy and theology, he believes deeply in the power of human potential. I met Ali in the south of France in 2013, and we've had many deep conversations since then. I cherish his friendship. Joshua Kamara is an entrepreneur in Sheffield, England. Starting out as a teenager in property investment, he has sourced more than 400 UK property deals, including a property my husband and I purchased and have operated since 2016. Josh developed his powerful philosophy of life based on discipline, dedication, and determination through a lifetime of high-level competitive sports, including a high-level boxing career from the age of 16. Josh quickly became a dear friend, and I'm honored to support him in launching his vision for empowering youth through mental and physical exercise. If you want to know more about these guys, I encourage you to go back to our first conversation, which you'll find in my YouTube channel. But for the next 90 minutes, we're going to go deeper in a conversation that we began on the 19th of June. We're listening to stories here, 3 different experiences of what it's like to be a Black man in the world today. Before we do, I have to share a little bit of my story and why is a white woman leading this conversation. I grew up in Houston, Texas in the 60s, being cared for by a beautiful Black woman named Thelma Johnson. Thelma worked in our house for 17 years, and she really did feel like a second mother to me. But I knew something was different about the way that she was treated. Yet it was my normal at the time, and I didn't question it. I went to university in Chicago and saw the inequities in Texas more clearly because of the different ways in which Blacks and whites related to each other in the North. I had a deep and confused unease about those inequalities, but I didn't act. In 1990, as a documentary TV producer, I spent a day inside Cook County Jail with a class of young men of color who were learning to take responsibility for themselves and their actions. As I got to know them a little bit that day and looked into their eyes, I asked them, "What can I do?" And they said to me, "Tell our stories." I haven't always done that, but when all of this happened, I knew I had to. I have to say it again in this video, I am not an expert. I am not a scholar. I may get some things wrong here, but I do know how to ask questions and facilitate conversation. I know the value of sharing our stories. This is a time to act, to do what we can. It's a time to listen to real people with real stories and learn what we do not know. So I want to invite the 3 of you. Maybe Ali, you'd like to go first in alphabetical order. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from and your background.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Telling people about me is a little difficult because I come from I come from the Northern Cape, like Catherine said, but I come from a place in the world where when you go there, you have the feeling that like somehow time stood still here. That like in the midst of all the happenings in South Africa, very little have changed in the Northern Cape. Yes, change is coming, but it's coming at such as you know, the pace is out of this world. It's like, you know, going nowhere slowly.
Mhm.
But then, you know, I've become this person. I've changed so many times. I've had to reinvent myself so many times. But now I'm here and living in Johannesburg now. I lived I lived in Europe. I lived in the States. I lived in China. I lived I lived here in South Africa. But I always come here. I always come home. I always felt like that I was always meant to come home. And so being here now in this time, coronavirus, having to, because I'm just starting over again, and having to do this during the time of coronavirus, it's very interesting. But like my philosophy in life is that I trust the process. I trust the process of, that we our human potential has it's endless. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to be part of this conversation. I'm here because I'm still growing in my self actualization, myself becoming myself, and it's very important for me to have a to 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 take part in a conversation, because nothing. I don't think we should feel so strongly about something that we could never talk about it. And I think if we had more conversations about things, we'd probably get to better outcomes. Whenever people are not willing to, to come to a table where they can speak about how they feel and how, how they've been wronged, and how they see themselves being um, perceived by others. I feel, conversation, have a talk. Nothing. There's nothing that a cup of tea and maybe like a glass of good wine or beer, or like could not shed some light on. Not to make light of this conversation. I'm just saying that this is how I see myself being here. Okay, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. Thank you.
No. So glad you're here, Ali. Cal, you're next in the list.
I'm next. Okay. Just trying to remember my alphabet here.
That should go there.
My name is Cal Harris, Cal Harris Jr. professionally, and I was born in Los Angeles, California, and I now live in Arizona, which is one of the big hot spots for coronavirus right now. So kind of a scary time, but anyway, I'm really happy to be here again. This has been the opening to a conversation not only with you all, but with myself, and a reflection, a process of reflecting back on the experiences that I've had throughout my life, and throughout the opportunity that I've had to travel internationally, and to be Black while doing it has been an interesting experience. It's been rewarding, and it's also been painful. And I am, through this process, learning to look at some things in different ways than I had been looking at them before. I feel like I have developed a way of dealing with things that is, I feel like it's evolving now. I feel like it may have been static up till now. And I just welcome the opportunity to re-examine some of the opinions that have been formed and habits that have become ingrained. And I think that as we have this conversation, that's one of the opportunities that this process avails us of, is the ability to re-examine the way that we have, well, the way that I have looked at things from my relatively unique perspective as a Motown kid that grew up around a lot of celebrities and in a very non-typical situation. And yeah, so I think my unique perspective also um, gives just another way of looking at things, and I'm happy to be here and participate in the process.
Mm. So glad to have you back, Cal. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Kamara, that leaves you.
So my name is Joshua Kamara. I'm born and raised in Sheffield with Sierra Leonean heritage, which is in West Africa. 30 years old, a married man with 3 kids. And after the last conversation, to say that us 4 as a collective have never spoke before, the relatability, the realness, the rawness, the connection, I'm back again to explore and delve deeper and delve into, we touched base on a lot of our experiences on the last call, and it really highlights me that it's so hard to condense that into 90 minutes. And it also showed that there was other people out there who had been needing this type of conversation and this type of unity. And it's been very liberating and empowering since we've had that last conversation, because as Cal said, it has been a catalyst for me to delve deeper into the experiences I've had and really ask myself some questions about the environment, the social circles, the economy. So it's been very much needed. So here again to share with all these beautiful people.
Thank you, Josh. I'm really happy to have you back here too. One of the questions that came up for me was, how have you felt since the last conversation? And in speaking with each of you, I've heard you say things you wish you had said, things you wish you hadn't said. And so I wonder if each of you could say a little more about what's been percolating for you as a result of the exchange that we had 2 weeks ago.
I believe with the exchange we had, it highlighted for me, I talked about a lot of my experiences and I highlighted about racism being a business, but I didn't talk about the effect on the way I now perceive others as well. Ali did a great job on being very truthful and open on his outlook and his experiences. And I feel that I didn't share mine. And I feel it's important to do so. And it's part of the coping mechanism, I believe, that I've adopted through life, where my perception, which has been put into question this week with a phone call I had from someone which I had put in a box, who I thought was quite ignorant, and actually left me a bit speechless, because I was amazed by his approach and his ability to directly put his point across, but to also listen to my side which was a beautiful thing. He started the call asking me, man to man, I want your opinion. And I said, right, okay, far away. And he said, what do you think to all the statues being taken down? And normally, in all honesty, maybe a year ago, I would have tried to divert or dilute my response. This time, I just got a bit of an awkwardness where I had an awkward pause, and I was like, and my mind just said, speak, Josh, speak. Speak, you know, so this is an opportunity to speak. So we had a conversation. He asked me about the statues. I gave my response. He asked about people going to protests when Black and ethnic people are more highly likely to be infected. And I responded, we've been dealing with Corona for 4 months. We've been dealing with racism for 400 years. And he asked me many other questions, which evidently brought to surface that he had an opinion and he wanted answers. But he really listened to my answers. And he actually said to me, Josh, you've showed me the other side of the coin. I thought racism didn't exist.
Wow.
And I said, why? He says, we've gone back 20 years. And I said, what brings you to that conclusion? And he said, well, my best friend's Black and he's never had any racism. And I said, right, okay. Anything else? Well, the 2 guys that own the shop down the road, they're Black and they've never had any racism. I said, right, okay. So I said, I'm very happy they've fortunately breezed through life without having any racism. But I said, do you believe it's down to their education as well, and also being able to identify racism? It's not just in your face, name calling. Do they understand the structures of racism? And after the conversation, he actually said to me, Josh, that was such an ignorant thing to say. He said, because actually, including my best friend and you, I don't know any other Black people. And it's occurred to me that there's a lot of people, not through hate, with ignorance, not through the will of not wanting to learn, but they've been happy on this saying that I don't see colour. And what was evident is he'd drawn these conclusions just from having a Black best friend who hadn't experienced racism. And through having the conversation, I said to him, well, look, this conversation we'd have never, ever had. I've known you for nearly 10 years, and we've never had this conversation. That is one of the benefits of the protests. It's highlighting, exposing, and we're now having the opportunity to have these conversations. So I've had a lot of these conversations before our call and after our call, and I'm starting to adjust to having these conversations more regularly and fluently when they used to get swept under the carpet. So I'm just trying to manage the way I respond to people, because it can be very draining, and it's not my responsibility now to inherit guilt or lack of education. I can't let it divert me from my path. So I'm also very conscious of that. But conversations like this, and since the last conversation, it's definitely reinforced the reason why this is so important for me.
Thank you, Josh. That so affirms what Ali was saying about conversation and about telling our stories, and really appreciate that.
When Josh was talking, I was like, I was reminded of like 2006, 2005, I think. First time I went to the United States. I would like go for like 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer, and I would like locum every weekend. I would be in a different city doing like taking the weekend services, you know, for the priests who would go on holiday. And you know, sometimes people would find me in the sacristy, in the place where the priest puts the vestments on, the robes on. And they would look at me and they were like, okay, And even some of them would ask, "Are you the priest?" I would say, "Yes, I am." Are you sure? I'd say, "Why are you asking?" It's because I'm young looking. Say no. I say, "Okay, it's because I'm not white." So no, but aren't you from Africa? I say, "Yes, I am." So what did you expect? So like whether it's in the south, in the deep south, whether it's in the north, whether it's in Milwaukee, whether it's up, upstate New York, like Buffalo, I've always had this thing that you know, I, I have, having to explain who I am. So like explaining who I am, it's like so boring now. It's like I feel like I don't want to anymore. I just, why can't I just, just be? Why should I have to qualify myself and explain myself? And like I like when people say that they don't see color. It's a beautiful thing. I always tell them, I'm so happy for you. I pray that one day I will get to the upper echelons of emotional intelligence where I too can have a life without color. And it's sad because I have mild, a mild form of color blindness. I don't see in between colors. So I said, my normal response is like I will pray that I will also one day get to a place where I don't see it. Because there's nothing wrong, to acknowledge that we are different, that we don't look the same. Our hair is not the same, our eye color is not the same, our skin tone is not the same. The way we speak is not the same because sameness is it doesn't exist. And I find that over the years I started out very militant and very, aggressive and very revolutionary. Nowadays, I'm more like, I will entertain this to a point, and then I'll say, okay, guys, like seriously now, let's just be honest about this thing. We have serious pathology here. There's serious need for us to talk about things because we don't need to be afraid of our differences. Our differences are not something we should be afraid of. But we have to start by acknowledging the fact that we are different, and because we are different, we treat each other differently, and we see each other differently. So that once that is out in the open, we can have a conversation. But let's do this so that we can have a conversation. And sometimes, look, some people, because I'm a priest, sometimes people, they have already this barrier. There's this natural, like this thing that I need to conform to certain preconceived ideas about who a priest could be. It's like this. A friend of mine, when I came here, he was one of the first people who welcomed me in this place. And then he brought me a bottle of non-alcoholic wine, de-alkalized wine. And I didn't check the bottle. Later because I know the brand of the wine. It's a very nice South African wine. And then a week later, I took the bottle out and I looked at it. I said, "What?" I called him. I say, "My friend, this is too expensive, man. Can't you just get it back and go and get me 2 bottles of cheap wine?" Because I want the real wine. I want the wine with alcohol. So it's like this negotiating the social contract, negotiating the social construct. But once we all agree or we all admit that we are students at this, it will be so much easier because nobody knows the answers. Nobody knows all the answers. Some of us know some answers and others know the other answers. And this is the only question paper that we can write together. There's no being flunked for working together on a paper. This is the one project we can take on together.
Yes. Thanks, Ali. Any thoughts, Cal, on how it's been for you since you shared a little bit? But
Yeah, there was so much of what you just said, Ali, and what you said, Josh, that really resonated with me. And at one point, I was trying to remember, and then there was all these other things coming. It's like, oh yeah, I agree with that too, and I agree with that too, and but I guess to work my way backwards, you said, Ali, that we're all students at this, and after the last call, I had a moment, a lot of moments where I look back and it's like, wow, should I have shared that? I should have shared something else that I didn't share, and like you said, Josh, it's just so hard to. I mean, we could talk for 3 hours, and there'd be much more that I've missed than there will be that I've covered. Um, but it's been a process for me of recognizing that my response to this, my approach to all this is far from perfect, and and that's an unrealistic expectation for me to put on myself or to put on others, that 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 you should be able to show up with the right perfect perspective. And I just want to say that my perspective is evolving, and I think that's the greatest thing that can happen in this situation, is that perspectives evolve from the way that it's easier to think or to believe that, hey, I know who the bad people are, I know who the good people are, and I know what I need to do here, and to not have to be in a state of consciousness all the time where you have to look at each situation um, at given the merits of that situation, and and that is one of the roots of the problem, is our unwillingness to do that, to to take each situation as it comes and not use our socialization and our history to determine how we're going to react to something. Josh, you were talking about the strategies of how you deal with things, and I can say that one of my strategies is really not confronting a lot of these issues that I know exist, and I know they're there. I've experienced them, and I know other people are experiencing them, but it's always easier if you can just put everyone at ease, and we can talk about this at some other time, or maybe never at all, even better. And this conversation and these times, these circumstances have caused me to have to do that, soul searching and analysis of, okay, does this really fit for me? And just in the last couple of weeks, I've really had some things change, as far as how I feel. I saw an article just last night, and it was regarding the Confederate monuments in the United States, and I believe the title of it, I was actually trying to look it up, because I'd love to credit this artist, and maybe I'll put it in the comments later, but or this writer, but the name of the article is, "You Want a Confederate Monument? My Body is a Confederate Monument." And it was written by a a woman who, a lighter skinned Black woman who, and I'm totally paraphrasing here, but she spoke about how her very existence was a testament to the racism and the rape of Black women by their white masters. That's the only reason she exists. And there was just something really compelling to me about that. And it let me, I mean, not that I didn't know that it was a thing, but it just really is like, this is a thing, you know? And I realized that's really, to a great degree, all of our experiences are a monument to a pretty horrendous crime that has taken place. But one of the other things that she said was that she identified both the slave and the master as her ancestors. So, and I mean, very few of us, if any, are 100% Black, and most of us have some blood, because that was just such a common practice, you know. And we all have some blood from this, you know, from those. I mean, I guess depending on where you're coming from, but yeah. But you know, it helped me come to terms with the fact that I both love and hate white people and Black people, and consequently myself, depending on where I am in the process that day. And that's something that we have to come to terms with. I find myself at odds with a lot of Black people, because I often find myself in the position of trying to defend the people without defending the actions, you know, because at the end of the day, they're people, and they're my relatives, and you know, we're all connected. And yeah, I mean, there's so much more I could say about that, but I highly recommend that article. If you Google "My Body as a Confederate Monument," then it should pop up. And it's really a wonderful article, and it's really unearthed a lot in me. So yeah.
Thank you, Cal. It's our history is very alive in us, all of us, you know, and we have to live with it. And it's our responses to it that will continue to give us more of what we have. Or, you know, I love the idea that you mentioned, Ali, of this may be the most creative project the human race has ever engaged in. And it is always, where do we go from here? What do we do with this? That is how we respond to what we have is a creative act. And so many of us are so disempowered that we think we have no contribution to make. And so we stay silent. Josh.
You know, I just also want to mention that as an artist, one thing that I noticed in between I shouldn't have said this, I shouldn't have done this, I should have done this, and all of the judgment that I put myself through, I really had a burst of creativity on the heels of having this conversation, because for better or for worse, it was me, and I was out there, you know, and you know, there's a lot to lose in this conversation. You could lose friends, and you know, you could lose standing, and especially in this day and age, you know, one wrong word and who knows. But I think it's important also to look at what there is to be gained from having this conversation. And for me, it was a reconnection with my artistic expression, and I think that's just one thing that we would get, you know, for this very hard work that we're doing, and emotionally draining work that we're doing. I think it can be very beneficial.
Whether you're an artist or not, whatever
Exactly.
you're here to do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am hearing things like, not just in this conversation, but things like, I'm tired of having to explain myself. I don't want to have to explain it to white people again. And yet there is the need for conversation, the need to tell our stories, to tell your stories, the need for other people to hear other stories other than our own. And I hear you, each of you, expressing how valuable this feels to you and why you're here again. So tell me more about what is and isn't valuable to you in this process. Go for it.
I would, just off the bat, I would just like, sometimes, and this might go either way. So, sometimes, like, I feel as if, like, when I speak to like white people in South Africa, and like, you know, but nothing, I didn't do anything to you. Like, I'm a good white person. I'm saying it's fine, it's okay. I'm just saying, like, let's look at like how this thing was broken. Because, you know, I'm not blaming the people who came here and who didn't bring their wives with them on the boat. I don't blame them. I'm just saying that, like, let's not, let's not, like, no, but like, why do you look like this? You know, who are you? Can you explain to us? See, no, I don't want to. You explain. You tell me why you had to come and, you know, break up a happy home here. Because, like, that's literally what you guys did. It's like you came here and now, you know, I don't even know where the white people, you know, who made me, who were, where they disappeared to. Like, I don't know where they are. I don't know. Like, I know my great grandmother, you know, she was a Nama woman from the Northern Cape. She always used to like work for white people. Like, my mother loved these white kids that she looked after. I used to have pictures of these white kids in our house, and I would, like, you know, once every so many weeks I would go, you know, with my mother to the white people's house, you know, that she cleaned, and I would jump on the beds, you know, and I'd like, it was crazy, but you know, but somehow, you know, feeling that, like, you're not white, you know, it's like, it's crazy. And I'm saying, I don't want to be white, I want to just be me. But, like, because of what happened, because of this Confederate statue that this woman is, because of what happened, I'm here now. Because, like, the question is always like, so why do you look the way you do? I say, okay, do you want the long version or the short version? They
Right.
say, okay, can we have the short version? I say, okay. When Jan van Riebeeck came here, he didn't bring his wife with. And when he came here, he found people that couldn't speak his language. So how did he ask to be intimate with them? So I'm not making any accusations. I'm not, you know, putting anybody on trial here. I'm just saying that, like, can we coexist now? Can we find a way at redressing that which needs redressing, but but like literally, can we just coexist? Can we like find a way of not having to defend who you are and having to explain who you are? Because like I didn't create this mess. I just found it like this. I was born into it. That's the long and the short of it.
Mm.
And for some people, it's difficult to hear. And for a long time, I've apologized for who I was. I've apologized to everybody, to everybody in South Africa. I always had to like apologize. Us colored people, we no nowadays when I say, us colored people, it's like I am just like I'm just being facetious when I say that. But in the past, I always used to explain myself, to apologize for what I am, for who I am. But now no longer. I'm just saying, guys, if we can't coexist, then it's your problem, not mine. Just own your own problem. It's no longer mine.
Thank
Because the racism, the ignorance of racism is that people don't want to acknowledge they're racist, and now they like a bull in a china shop, like they just break things, break people. But like if you're racist, just acknowledge it, and you can talk about it, you can get over this thing. It's not insurmountable as a challenge. It's actually something that it brings to the creative process, it brings so much impetus because now we have something that we can work with. You've been honest.
Mm.
Like the whole time we have to like trot around, we can't hurt your feelings. We can't like, we can't. I go and I say, no, man, wait. Wait. Mm-mm. Just like take a minute there.
Yeah. Thank you, Al.
I'm ranting. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I appreciate your story very much. I just want to say, not to throw a spring into this, but what is hitting me as someone who has experienced rape is that very often the victim is made the wrong party.
Yeah.
And this is where we are now. This happened. And it's not about blame, it's about responsibility. And it is a time for taking risks and speaking our truth, whatever the repercussions of that are. And we need that desperately. We need all the facets of the truth in order to understand where we go from here. Josh, Cal, anything you guys want to?
I feel what's really valuable is the exposure, and I only feel it's valuable if people are actually making sustainable changes, because to me, even from our last conversation, it feels like it's trending, but I haven't seen individuals make changes. And I saw a lot of stuff on Instagram, I saw a lot of stuff on social media, but it feels like the momentum is starting to drop again, which is concerning. So I really feel like someone influential has to really also facilitate a lot of the inspired and empowered people to keep this as a conversational topic point. I find what's not valuable is highlight all the resistance to these type of conversations, all the resistance to the protest, which just highlight for all the people that say racism doesn't exist. People are turning out and really showing their fragility. And it'd be interesting to also speak to white people to see how they feel, because there's a lot of white people, especially in England, all over, that grow up in the same social deprivation, limited opportunities, discriminated and against. So it'll be interesting for I know a lot of white people that, have grown up in Black communities. They understand the culture, they're a part of it, they promote it and they support it. But I just see that there's a lot of conversations and a lot of stuff on social media, but I just hope that there is a real individual responsibility where they're doing however big or small it is just to try and make a difference. And I don't want the momentum to just drop and fall, and this just gets highlighted again in another year or another 2 years without anything really meaningful happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. That may have been, that's the first thing that's been on the tip of my tongue for a minute now, is that the exposure, how important that is. If often the solution to a problem is just in being conscious that there is a problem. I think that most of the solutions are self-explanatory. When you realize that you're stepping on the cat's tail,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be told what to do. You just know. But until you know that's what's happening, you don't know that you need to do something different. And consciousness is the cure in a lot of this, or it's the pathway to the cure. And but I think in addition to, or as a part of, in an effort to get to that consciousness, I think we have to make space for people to say what they need to say, and to make mistakes and to be wrong. And the thing that I find that is the least helpful is any effort to shut that process down. And there's a lot of that, and it's understandable because it's an uncomfortable process, and everybody's not always ready to be going through that process. But I think if we can make room for that, and when we're listening to people, just like you would a child, if nobody just stands up and walks, you've got to bump into tables and fall down and skin your knees before you get it right. And you have to go through that process. It's just unavoidable. And so if we really want to facilitate what I think could be arguably the most necessary part of this, which is consciousness, we have to make room. And that's been a big part of my process. Is I've never really had much trouble making room for other people to be where they are, but I've had a great deal of trouble making room for myself to process this thing, and to try something and it not work, and then come back and try it a different way. And I spend a lot of time telling people, say, well, you have to understand that this is happening and that's happening. And in my case, I feel like I've just had to make the room for myself to make mistakes. So I may say something today, and I may find out it's completely wrong tomorrow. And I've done that a few times, and it's great. Try it.
Yeah, I the term, I think, Josh, you used micro micro attacks or micro violations. I can't remember the exact term you used.
Mm.
But these small, unconscious, um, tell me about that, because I think that those kinds of things, because obviously there are huge changes that need to happen at the systemic level, the policy level, and there are these micro changes that every single one of us can make just by becoming more conscious of the impact of our words, our movements. Not that we have to be hyper vigilant, but we can be conscious without diminishing who we are. So I would love to hear more about your experiences, all of you, your experiences of these things, so that awareness can be created.
I think, firstly, it's very hard to navigate through life without race being highlighted as well, with classification and social classification. And the way we're conditioned is to be in a very distracted state, to take us away from consciousness. All the screens, all the social media, all the entertainment, the sports. It's great, but it's a huge diversion from having that alignment with yourself to allow yourself to just think. And through the lockdown, coronavirus, that was one thing, positive thing that presented itself, was having that time to just reconnect and not feel guilty spending time on yourself. So that's been a huge blessing. With normalized racism, which to the gentleman I spoke to says, well, I don't see racism. He won't, because he's a white guy who believes that it doesn't exist. So he won't see the micro aggressive comments that we receive on a daily basis. There's microaggression and there's massive aggression. I'll tell you, a microaggressive comment from me the other day was, I was at a corporate event, dressed smartly and standing around the bar area, and I got approached and asked if I was a sound engineer, and when the music was coming on, being the only guy of ethnicity in the room, which can go two ways. And I was actually thinking, from the last conversation, I'd like to ask everyone in this call how they would react to racism now, because I remember the first time where I was able to control myself emotionally when I was 15, and I'd received a lot of racism going to football matches. I saw some horrific racist experiences with fans, with the police, with myself playing. Had a lot of racism. Certain areas outside of Sheffield, the sub towns in South Yorkshire, where these are ex-mining towns, and there's a lot of social deprivation, a lot of ignorance, a lot of lack of education. And I remember I was the captain for my football team, and one occasion when I was 15, I remember, because it's under 16s, I had someone who was just becoming 15, so he was 14, and it was the first time he'd experienced racism on the football field. And he reacted how I would have reacted a few years before, but I'd experienced it, and I was more mature. And I remember at the end of the game, there must have been all the players, so it was about 15 players, and even the parents, and I was only 15 years old, and the manager of the team, who was a white male, he thought it was my responsibility to break down what had just happened and how I'd felt. And he didn't do that to put me on the spot. He did that with his best intentions, because he knew I'd experienced it. He knew I was from a place where I would speak and I'd give guidance and wisdom firsthand, which he knew he couldn't relate to the other player who'd received it that day. And I remember he was so worked up. He wanted to fight. He was so emotional. And I remember having the kind of clarity and discipline where I'd no longer take it emotionally anymore. I always expected to receive it, and if I didn't receive it, it was a pleasant surprise. And I remember making a speech and just saying to him that you can't let other people's views and opinions and misguided assumptions of you divert you from who you are and what you're doing. And I just feel that it took some time to get to that position. And we face it every day. And you could have 5 microaggressive experiences in that day, whether someone thinks you're a DJ, somebody thinks you're going to sell them drugs when you're out, someone thinks that you should be the life of the party, why you're not dancing. You know, there's all these stereotypes and perceptions which we have to take on. And if we overreact on the 6th time, is it our fault?
Yeah.
Or is it that person's fault? So you have to be, like Cal's saying, very conscious and aware constantly, because it can be something so, life is so fragile. It takes less than a second to throw a punch. You know, it's so fragile that can reshape your whole life and change your whole life. So then there's actual in your face racism, where, just an example, my brother less than a year ago was in the town centre walking around. He's no longer with with the baby's mother, and he's with a white girl who he's not even in a relationship with. His daughter's black. He's got a darker pigmentation than myself. And this man came up, spat on the floor in front of them, and said to the white girl, "You should be ashamed of yourself." And my brother was so taken back that actually his white friend reacted, and she reacted in quite an aggressive way. And she kind of looked at my brother to say, "Are you not going to do anything about it?" And my brother just took the stance of taking a breath. And I think he was so taken aback, but his response was, have you got any kids yourself? He's like, "Yes, I've got 3 daughters." And he said, "Well, I hope those 3 daughters all end up with black men, and you can have we can come back to this conversation." And he walked away. But he was saying, if earlier in the day, if I'd had several other microaggressive, stereotypical comments or experiences, I might have reacted in a completely different way. So we do have to be very conscious, and we do have to be very aware of how we're feeling. And like I said, it's not our responsibility to inherit anybody's guilt or ignorance or to educate them. So we have to firstly be very aware of our own energy and conserve and protect that the best we can.
Yeah. Very wise words. And I'm not surprised at 15 that you were already taking that role. But the thing that really is ringing for me is how many people I've heard, how many Black people I've heard lately say, "I just want to be myself." And that is not a privilege that you have, because there's so much control that has to happen in order to just not be, projected criminally onto.
And just adding on that, Catherine, as well, I'm very much an individual. I could have half a bottle of rum, blast out inappropriate music, maybe say inappropriate things, do inappropriate things. The next day, I might be in the woods reading a book, educating my kids. So, and you're gonna get judged. You could see me in a tracksuit if I've come from training, and you'll have a different perception of me to when I'm in a suit. And the way we're perceived, and also within our community. So there's certain things, if I like classical music and I want to play classical music, it might get frowned upon in the Black community. Like, who's this guy? Like, what's he about? And then you alienate yourself away from your own people. You could then, certain films, it all filters down to how people perceive us, the stereotypes, the preconceptions, and we have to be very aware of it. And people have to be very aware of the words that they use, because some of the language sometimes and some of the jokes I have to listen to on a daily basis, and they think, "Oh, he's all right, he's a nice guy, he'll find it funny." Come out of a racist joke. It's something that when people say, "I don't see color," this is what we we experience on a multiple times in a day sometimes. So it's very real. It is very real.
Yeah.
I'm just adding on to that. It's like it's being in this abusive relationship long term. Like the abuse doesn't it doesn't get done. It's like now you have to compensate for someone's, like, I don't know, for someone's lack of emotional intelligence, or sometimes I just it confines me. Like how white people are already so privileged, now you still have to make allowances for them to still be abusive towards you. And that sometimes is tiring, and it's like, yes, like, no, man. Mm-mm. You already took everything, now you still have to like take this also. It's like, no. Sometimes I just like, I check out of this thing. I'm just gonna like seek life elsewhere. It's like, because like you always have to explain yourself, like constantly, like, the whole time, because you're always guilty. You're always like bad. You're always a drunk. You're a womanizer. You're a blah blah blah. You're always like, like Josh said, like they'll play music and they would expect you to start dancing. And like I'm saying, like, this is so racist, man. It's like, what's wrong with you? It's like, no, we're not always drunk. Don't wait. We know how to drink wine. I lived in France. I know. I lived in Champagne. I know. I drank real shit. I know these things. I'm not uncultured as no. Don't project your ideas, and like it's there's this thing about me, and sometimes I find it really difficult to accept, like when people say to me, no, Father, you did well today, you preached well, or you did, you it's almost like they validating me, and like, so sometimes it's difficult to just accept it for the praise it is, because I've been like for 18 years, like I had to like, you have to overperform in order for you to be like white people. So I would like profusely thank people if they say, no, you did well. I like, thank you, you're so kind, you're too kind, because it has become this thing now that I'm not in a competition with anybody. But why should I have had this pressure from the get-go? Why wasn't I just allowed to just be? So this is the long-term abuse that I always refer to. I say, no, man, this abuse, it has to have a shelf life. Some statute of limitations must like kick in or something. Like there must be something.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Cal.
Yeah, I'm listening to what you both said on this, and it's just reminding me of the tremendous cost to me personally for something that I've always been proud of is for having been able to be an overperformer. One of the things that I've been most proud of is the times that I've been able to go into a job interview where there were 5 white people up for the gig and still get the gig because I was the best person for the gig. And that's not on a, what do they call that? I can't think of the word now. But anyway, but a big part of that also is that your management of these microaggressions becomes automatic after a while. And that's what getting really good at it is that you automatically hear a racist joke and it doesn't even occur to you to get angry you know, and you see the white woman walk to the other side of the street, clutching her purse. And well, actually, I never really got good at that. That continues to bother me when it happens. I've had a handful of situations in my life where I have internalized something over and over and over again and just let it go and let it go, and then got to my limit. And everyone has a number, you know, of how much abuse you can take before you can take no more, and you just explode. And I've had to learn that it's my responsibility to let some of that pressure out before I get to the explosion point. But it's difficult because it's expected of you. You know, if you really want to thrive in a white environment, that's expected of you. And you can watch all the people around you, all the white people around you express themselves and go off on people and get angry, and then they're drinking the next minute. But if it happens to you, you're out of there. And that's happened to me, you know, where I've just continued to take something and continue to take something, and then get surprised myself by the fact that, oh, wait, I just reached the boiling point here, and here it is. And, you know, and now you've got an angry 6'6" black man in front of you, and no one wants that. And I've never known anyone to react positively to that. And I'm remembering the physical pain that always accompanies that experience for me. When I mean, it's very few times that it's happened, but when it does, it's literally physically painful. And as I was listening to your stories, I was remembering that pain and realizing that pain is the accumulation of all of those microaggressions and situations that I've internalized, you know. So you know, while I may have been patting myself on the back for my ability to do that, I'm finding that the price is just too high, and it robs the people around you of the much needed consciousness that could help them to be better, and to help you to be better. And then for them to find out, you know, there's nothing worse than finding out you've been doing the wrong thing for the last 5 years and no one said anything to you about it, and now you're being asked to pay for it all at once. And so that's something that I'm endeavoring to do. But like I said before, there has to be the space for that to happen. And you know, I have found that I've always made space for the white people in my life to express themselves, but I have not always allowed the black people in my life. I almost never allow that. I always react negatively to that, because there's this standard that says, don't let the white people see you angry. They'll fucking kill you. And it's the truth, you know. And so while there's something to be said about not, you know, not going overboard with it, you know, I've just had to open up a little more and hear the anger and hear the frustration and realize that, oh, wait a minute, this is my anger and this is my frustration.
Mm.
And
Oh, I think he's frozen.
well, and
Cal, if you can hear me, you have frozen, so you might take off your. Okay, you're back. You froze for a minute, so if you could say back
okay.
the last 3 sentences, that would be helpful.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know where I left off, but basically,
You were talking about anger and, you know,
yeah. Was it before or after my cursing?
It was after. Well, the first one, it was after that. Which is totally legitimate. I get it. Go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on, but you know, that's kind of how it happens. You know, that it starts to well up in you, and then you just go further than you ever intended to go. And so, you know, I think at the end of the day, we have to honor everyone's process and allow them to be where they are, and make room for some of this anger. You know, I think if we had this conversation even a month ago, or a couple of months ago, I might have been advising people, it's like, okay, but try not to be so angry, try not to get in people's faces and be so aggressive with this. And you know, I mean, there's certainly boundaries, you know, that need to be respected, established and respected in this process. But then there's also space that needs to be made so that this process can happen.
You've said so many things, Cal. I just want to say a couple of things. Absolutely, one of the comments that came after the first program was, but now have a conversation that makes space for this anger. So I want to invite that, if that's here. You also talked about the need to kind of calibrate or make space for ourselves to feel what we feel in doses that we can handle, so that we can, in a sense, I mean, I think where we are as societies right now is hugely important, and I pray, Josh, you know, that the momentum, I feel that too, there's a lessening of the momentum, but what has happened is the result as a society of this very thing, having to keep silent for so long, or, you know, in order to stay alive, basically. And what I see now is that the threat doesn't even require an angry man, black man, or an angry black woman in front of me. You know, there's a threat, no matter, I will threaten you no matter what, is the thing. It doesn't have to be quote unquote justified in even my mind. And but I also think there needs to be a safe space, a sort of formalized process where this can occur between blacks and whites and all races. And so I'm just really grateful for, you know, it's like you said in one of our offline conversations, Cal, you know, I have to be black every day. And so that raises for me the question.
Except for Tuesdays.
Oh, I mean, it's big. And, you know, this brings up the question of white privilege. So there's a lot of stuff on the table right now. And I just want to open it to see what is needing to be said next.
I'm always the guy that says, you know, if we lose it and we get like really violent, like everybody's like, "Ooh, they did it again, they did it again," and like I'm saying, like this, like now the all the riots and all the protest, and it's like it's that boiling over, but just on a bigger scale. But like millions of people every day have to like keep the lid on the pot that wants to boil over. And you know, somebody did something wrong, you know, to you. Now you have to go anger management classes for you not to react to what somebody else did to you. It's almost like the folly of modern society. I'm and this is where white privilege, this white privilege thing, it's something that I feel very strongly about. It's like you broke it, and now you know we have to pay to fix it. It's like, and you have all the money. So that's basically what it gets for me. What it comes down to, I'm saying like you broke it. Now we have to pay for it, but you still have the money. And that's been my, for the last few years, that's been my argument. I'm just saying that like I'm no longer gonna take the responsibility for what other people did. You know, it's you know they gotta own this thing, and I'm gonna take some time now to just you know try and be me for you know, so that I can at least be me, and yeah. But it's always interesting. Like when I drive a car and there's a police blockade or something, step aside, sir. Breathalyze. You people must like drinking and driving. Okay. But what makes it worse when it says zip, it can't be. I say, what do you mean? No, but you people always drink and drive. I say no. No. Don't. I'm gonna get back into my car and I'm gonna drive.
Yeah, on the subject of white privilege, I for one, I have to say that it's been a journey that I'm on, recognizing, you know, that it exists, the degree to which it exists, because for one, I you know I have lived a life that has made a lot of what many people call white privilege available to me, and so I don't necessarily experience it in the same way, but at the same time, like I was saying before, so much of what I've done has been so automatic that I'm realizing there's a lot of it that's there that I haven't seen. But having said that, I feel that the approach to white privilege by a lot of people these days is to try to take it away from white people. And I mean, and I see white people doing that more than anyone. Just, you know, it's like, hey, you know, acknowledging it, and it's great that it's being acknowledged. But it just seems like there's this energy to remove white privilege rather than to add black privilege. And and really, white privilege kind of represents the baseline. Um, White privilege means you can get angry when you're angry. And it means you can say what you need to say, and you can do what you need to do. And everybody needs that. This world is not going to operate efficiently until everyone has what we now call white privilege. So I'm not interested in white people laying down their privilege. I'm interested in Black people picking it up.
Mm. It's really well said, Cal. I appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
I am aware that in conversations we've had unrecorded, that there were maybe stories that haven't been shared. And I guess I want to ask each of you if there is a story that you would like to share that speaks somehow to your personal experience of things that need to change for this to be different in the next 30 years. Whether it's a way that you handled a situation, whether it's things that have happened that you never want to see happen to anyone else. And I didn't exactly give you this question in advance, so.
In South Africa, okay.
Go on now.
In South Africa now, if you want your children to have a good education, they have to go to a certain kind of school. You need to have a certain kind of income for them to be able to get a good education. So, and having to see how our kids have to, at least two of them, they come to me and they say to me, they call me Chomi. They say to me, they ask me why my hair am I wearing a wig? I said to the one girl, they're just ignorant. Don't pay them any mind. It's fine. Your hair's yours. It's not somebody else's that you got. It's okay. But we have to get them into these schools in order for them to get a good education. But the schools are still run by white people, and the racism is still so evident. I sit and I say to myself, after all this is still gonna continue? These kids, they have to conform. They have to submit to this whiteness, and they can't just be themselves. So how long is this gonna last? I thought that it was done, man. It should be done. But I'm telling you, I went to a white school. It's not a white school, a previously white school. I went there to an open day, and I felt like I was waiting for one of these white people to just slap me or something. I was making myself small and trying to hide behind other people so that they don't see that I'm not white. And it's in 2008, 2019, it still continues. It's I couldn't sleep. I was anxious. I was but also I was angry that this is still continuing. And this is just the way it's gonna be. So how long will it last is my question. And how much is it gonna take for it to change?
I think off the back of that, if you look at how long Black people have been oppressed, we're going to need time to start reversing the institutional arrangements. We're going to have to take time to change the system because it's so deeply embedded. So it's really positive the conversations have started, But to really make an impact and to make fundamental changes is going to take time. And that's why the momentum and the unity and the alignment is so important. I do feel I could talk on a few different levels. I mean, talking about experiences where Black people, I feel like our culture is accepted, but us as people are not still. So I remember there was a great entrepreneur called Levi Roots. You might know him for Reggae Sauce and his cooking books, Jamaican man. He went on something called The Dragon's Den, and he was, awarded investment. And it was around that time, this must be about 8 years ago, and this is when Nando's started getting a lot of attention, peri-peri seasoning, and jerk seasoning available in shops. You know, a lot of the cultural foundations of Black people started to filter into the mainstream. And I remember thinking, okay, yeah, it's happening. But why, unfortunately, a lot of the cultural benefits that people can benefit from, whether it's music, whether it's food, flavor, that's accepted a lot more. That's widely accepted more, talking in the UK, but the people are still not. And looking at experiences I've had, I think the relationship with the police see it as us against them. Mm-hmm. They see us as all being in gangs, and their gang is to counteract our gangs, unfortunately. So that relationship needs to change. I've had experiences where I've been thrown in the back of police vans for no real apparent reason, with handcuffs on, taken down cobbled streets, battered around, taken out, thrown out. Do you want to make a formal complaint or do you want to go home? This was within the last 6 years. So there are experiences where we've been out as a group, maybe about 8 of us, all of ethnic minority, and you can't come in this club, lads, unless you're buying a £1,500 table. If you buy a table, then you're welcome to come in. But if you're not buying a table, you're not coming in. And the conversation filtered down to, you're not bothering the girls and you're not causing trouble, and so all the stereotypes we've picked up on earlier get thrown in our faces on night outs. It's always, oh, you're wearing the wrong shoes. So I just feel like racism is so deeply embedded in the way we're conditioned and the way we think and the systems and the infrastructure. It's going to take time. It's really going to take time. And we need to manage our expectations and understand that, but not lose hope, not lose faith. Mm. And I feel our generation, speaking to my older generation, my stepdad, he's in his 70s, 73, and he's so passionate, but he's like, I'm tired, Josh. I've been fighting this my whole life, and we've had false promises. Looking at the Windrush scandal in the UK, they put aside millions. They've only paid around 60,000 out so far, and this was meant to be all settled, last year. So he said, I'm tired of false promises. I'm tired of the conversations. It's down to you, your generation. Please use your energy now and just keep pushing over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years and try and really force this change, because it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
Mm.
Wow, Josh, I'm getting hungry. I need some Nando's. You just had to say peri peri, but
it's true. It's true. It's so true.
Yeah. And now we can't go. But anyway, that's another conversation.
You should have lots of chicken in the fridge, Carl. You should have an abundance of chicken in the fridge. Come on.
I just fried up a bunch last night, and I'm not really kidding. Actually, I really did fry some chicken. Yeah. Be sure to catch my video. Be sure to catch my video.
Some stereotypes are very true. I have to chicken.
When I was about 18 or 19 years old, I lived in an apartment building with my mother, and my mother and father were separated, so it was my mother, me, and my brother and I and my mother. And at a certain point, a group bought the apartment building that we lived in. And there were people around the neighborhood that would come by from time to time. And, I've never written graffiti, not because I'm such a great person, I just haven't done it. And, but somebody did. Somebody wrote graffiti in our apartment, and we were the only Black family in that apartment. And so they just assumed that it was us. And I didn't know this when this situation was developing, but they had gone around to all of our surrounding neighbors that lived above, below, and beside us and said that there's a family in 44C that we're trying to get rid of. So if you see anything or you hear anything that we can use to get rid of these people, because they're the ones that are writing this graffiti and all this, but I didn't know any of this. All I knew was that suddenly we started getting complaints and warnings about things that had never happened, or things that could have been solved directly. It's like, why, it's like all of a sudden there's just a note on our door saying, you were making too much noise the other day, and if this happens again, we get 2 more warnings, you're out of here. And so after a couple of these incidents, there was an incident where we got a notice, and this was many, many years ago, but so I don't remember the specifics, but at the end of the day, it became clear to me that this was being trumped up and that this was not a real thing. And it's like, and I didn't even know the neighbor who was making the complaint. So I was really confused, but I was also angry. And that was a moment where I reached a boiling point, because, and the interesting thing is they accused my brother, my younger brother, of something that I knew he hadn't done. And so I got really angry, and I can feel this now, all these years later. I got really angry, and I went down to the woman's apartment, and I banged on the door, and she opened up the door, and I'm like, what the fuck is your problem? Why would you, why are you doing this? I don't even know you. And the manager of the building is in the apartment with her, having a discussion, I guess, on the next steps for getting rid of us. And that incident ended up being the incident that they used to evict us from the apartment. And when my father found out, because even though he didn't live with us, he paid for the apartment. And because I was of age, my dad told me, it's like, and remember, I've always been trained to never do what I did, but I just reached a point, and I was just like, how much of this can I take? And so, and it was on Father's Day that my father told me, it's like, well, since you can't control yourself, and since you did this, you can go find yourself a place to live. And that's how I ended up living in my car. And before I had to live in my car, I went and stayed with one of our neighbors. And they told me that, yeah, they went to all of us to find out if there was anything that we had on you to get you out of here, because they think that you're responsible for this graffiti. And that, that was the beginning of a really bad period for me, where I lived in a van that had no windows, and there were ants crawling in the car, and eventually the car broke down. So I was trying to get a job as a you know, anything that had a car, just so that I could have a car. And I mean, you know, there are much worse stories than that from people, and I realized that, and I was able to get it together and get a job and do all the things that you're supposed to do. But so many people don't have the options that I had, and something like that happening is the complete end for them, and is how they end up in jail or in or dead. You know, I was extremely fortunate, even with that unfortunate experience. But you know, the moral of that story, I guess, for me is that, for one, living like that is not something you can expect anyone to do indefinitely. It's gonna come out sooner or later. So you're better off making a space where people can express themselves before it goes overboard. And the other moral is these misconceptions, you know, become systematic racism and affect people's lives, can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. Just this, you know, and I get so angry when I hear things like the woman in Central Park that you know, made the accusation against the man, the bird watcher. You say, I'm gonna, you know, and yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I could go on and on with that too, but yeah, that's a story that kind of wraps up a lot of the things that I've been talking about today. And yeah, and I can really feel the anger and the frustration and the sadness of those circumstances, and the disappointment in my father for not standing up for us at that time, and I'm realizing that I, in a lot of ways, have become that person that says, you need to just control yourself. You need to just keep that inside and not express your anger and not let anyone see that. And, you know, I mean, I've seen these videos where people are being harassed by the police, and it's like, well, I would have just said, how are you today, officer? And you know, and I would have skated out of there with no problem. But you don't know when somebody's had enough, especially when they're not eating, you know, when they don't have a job, and when their father's in prison. You know, it's like, who is anyone to say, who am I to say that you should not have reached the boiling point when you reached it? So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to tell that story and get some of that out. And yeah.
Cal, I so honor your courage to share from that level of honesty. And I'm so clear. There is so much work to do here. And this is nowhere near a sprint. We are in a long haul marathon. And we have to learn, all of us, white, black, brown, whatever color we are, to manage what I have a friend who calls it the lizard brain, you know, that is just the animal brain that just, I'm threatened, I react, and do it have safe spaces for that, where we don't have to get to that boiling point. But I also really see, and I know more now today, listening to all of you, how grateful I should be that you have shown up here to speak in this way with me and with each other. But until we change the system that projects the threat onto people who look like you, we can never complete the work. And that is my responsibility and all the people who look like me. And we're engaged in a creative process that requires anger to fuel it. It's just how it is. So I want to give each of you a minute or so to share whatever you want to go out on from this call. And we will do this again if you would like to. And I'm also really open to inviting people to participate in these conversations as well. So whatever last thoughts you might have, please share them with us.
Last thoughts. It's sad. It's sometimes my go-to emotion is sadness. It's just sad that like so many generations have passed and things haven't changed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of a lot of I'm in touch with a lot of the pain of these situations, and in a sense I feel like I'm channeling a lot of anger that's not mine, but it's, you know, it's ours, I guess you could say. But I was can't remember who I was speaking to about this the other day. A friend of mine I was speaking to and saying that I've heard pain described as blocked joy. And you know, it's our natural state that joy should flow through us.
Yes.
And when it doesn't, when something stops it from that joy from flowing, it's pain. So an experience that I'm having is I'm becoming aware of the restoration of that flow in the midst of the anger and the pain that these stories are rehashing for me. I'm aware that there is the potential of joy being restored, and so and everything else that we are all looking for, you know, love, joy, creativity, power, you know, those are behind that pain is all that blocked goodness.
Yes.
And so that's an incentive to go through this process. And I invite, you know, more people to go through this process.
Thank you, Cal.
Yeah, just going back to what Carl raised earlier, a lot of it is mindfulness. We can't allow it to consistently overpower or overcast us from our own journeys. We've really got to be conscious of that. I feel from everything we've said today as well, it's very evident, and what they say is issues stay in tissues, and we're carrying these issues, and it is so important to have an outlet. Me personally, it's a physical outlet through sport, but also, you know, having that time, like we said, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through conversations like this, we need to continually have outlets for ourselves. So, I mean, what Cal, the story that Cal just beautifully shared there, if he had taken that one step further and got himself a criminal record, that was it for him. And that wasn't him. That wasn't his root being. That had been a distorted Cal, you know, a antagonized Cal. And that's the dangers. So I think it's very important for all of us to find an outlet and to express ourselves and to be there for each other. To say that, again, I'll readdress this, to say that we've never as a four had a conversation before this, and how we can all relate to each other and understand and hear each other. There's no reason why we can't do that with the person next door, the person down the road, the person in the community. And we just need to be very conscious of that, and also look at our own conditioning, because that sometimes can be a barrier as well. So yeah, just be very open and very mindful. That's what I'd like to go out on.
Thank you, Josh. We are over time again. What a surprise. This has been such a privilege to me. That's my real privilege, to be here with the three of you, and really to honor the work that you have done in your personal lives and in your journeys to deal with all you've dealt with, and to come through it with wisdom and creativity and contribution. It is what every human being is capable of, and yet I know the work that it takes to do that. So I honor all of you for that. And thank you, Cal and Ali and Josh, for being here, for trusting me, for speaking your truth, and for taking a stand for the possibility of coming together across this table, across this divide. This weekend here in the US, we will celebrate Independence Day. And I think it's really important not to forget that this country was founded on the belief that all of us are created equal, and that we are all endowed with unalienable rights, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But let us also not forget that we have not always upheld these rights for all, and that some of the practices that we have used to secure these rights have violated them and violated what we say we stand for. It is past time for all of us to go into our rooms, look into our hearts, and ask ourselves, what do we really stand for with our one and only life? I want to thank each of you who has stayed with us through this program, who's taken the time to watch all the way to the end. It is each of you doing what you know how to do, taking risks in your lives for what you know is right, that will turn the momentum that we have today into lasting change. So thank you very much, and I hope that we'll see you again next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.